Welcome back to the Talking Hedge. I'm Josh Kincaid, Capital Markets Analyst and host of your Cannabis Business Podcast. Today we've got Rohit Srivastava. He's a Chief Investment Officer and Portfolio Manager for Saroj and Bhanu Fund. Rohit, thanks for being back on the podcast.
Thanks, Josh. Very excited to be in a podcast. And a lot of things happened this last 1 week. Was a very crazy week for all these cannabis stocks. And all the people who are following cannabis stocks, they might already know what is happening. But here is what's just a disclaimers, the same disclaimers. This is all for entertainment, all for learning. There's no piece of advice we are giving here on financial basis. So just take it as an entertainment and learning. We're talking about the cannabis index, equally weighted. This is what was about 2+ months ago. This was last week where we were seeing that it could be a reversal and we were waiting for it to be tested. And this where it is still testing. So it is still at the same point. So we, even though if we want to invest, I think it's still testing at this point and we should be cautious about this part. On the cash flow point of view, this was 2 months ago where the cash was below the average daily cash value, trade value. This was about last week. It was looking like that it's going to build like a new trend. It is building a new trend and it was going upwards. It was reaching towards the zero index. And we thought that this was probably like the point where it's going to turn back, and we were being cautious about it. But look at what happened this week. This week, a lot of cash has come out of this market, the cannabis market. Look at that point where it's like a lot of cash, about more than $200 to $300 million of cash has been coming out of this index. And I'll talk a little bit later as to what is happening with that and why it happened that so much cash has been coming out. And I will talk about that a little bit later. But meanwhile, I want to point out that this is scary, as well as this is a little bit an opportunity to buy as well on your favorite stocks. But we'll talk about that a little bit later. From the short-term basis, these are the stocks which we were recommending. These are the stocks we are trying and keeping track of what has been bought and what has been sold by the AI. And this was about a month ago. This was 3 weeks ago. This was last week where we were holding these 6 stocks. And because all the other ones were not in the state of buying. And this is where we are this week. And all of these, most of them are still green except the Arena Pharmaceutical, which is about 7.5%, but it is still not on a sell point. I think my thought process is that from what I understand at this point, I think there will be some of these which will probably sell this coming week. And I think because it is at like a really good profitable point, like you can see that one of our top performers, ABBV, is about 33% gain. We bought it on the 20th of August, and it is had an extremely awesome run. And I think it's probably running its course on that. But I think we'll see this week what's going to happen. And some of the other ones, the Altria Group and the PMD and Cara, these are all the top performance at this point. But I want to focus on the stock, on the great cash flow which has gone out, and this is the reason. So the one which you're seeing in red is the core reason of why there has been so much cash out in this last 1 week. Now, if you see all of these, we have majority of them which had major losses. Aurora 37% in the last 1 week. Alpha 23%, Canopy 29%. These all big names are having a huge cash out in the last 1 week. Now, this is where we have talked about this many times, Josh, that the significance of the AI, the having predictive analytics and the technical analysis, which keeps us safe during this time, is the stocks which we hold, our portfolio holds, which we have been talking from weeks. These stocks are the ones which are holding tight, and they are actually on the upside. They are actually on the positive side in the last 1 week when all these other stocks are failing. And this is the significance of why I want to reiterate that, any of these stocks, they all are capable of going higher, but keeping an eye on when to buy is a very important part of that. And some of these stocks might be at a good point and to buy. And I can probably, maybe in the next time when we do a little bit more detailed podcast, I can talk a little more about Cron or some of these, like I think Alpha is probably another one which probably might be at a good point to buy. But I will give more detailed analysis next time about which one of these, after having lost so much in the last 1 week, which might be a good point to buy. But at this point, what I want to reiterate is that focus on the technicals, focus on what we're talking as to which stocks are probably a good pulse to buy, and follow that. At this point, from a conclusion standpoint, I think it's still testing the 475, so it's still not a point where we should get in the market. We should still be waiting to see for the market to stabilize. And on a short-term basis, these 5 stocks which we are holding, we might be seeing some of them selling off as we're closing to the end of the year, and some of them had like really great run, as specifically ABBV. Some of them might be taking, some funds might be taking profits out of that before the end of the year. So I would say that I think next week is probably a good week to keep an eye on those 5 stocks: ABBV, Cara, MO, and PMD, and actually also IIPR. But I think those are the ones to take a closer look on that. As of now, I think we are in a hold state of investing in this index at this point. So thank you.
So yeah, very interesting. So I'm taking a look at the decline, wondering if it's asset reallocation. That's the time of year right now. Obviously, this is just a technical indicator. I'm wondering about fundamentals, wondering if tis this season to take profits off the table. Going back to that graph, it looked like what we were doing was hovering between 475 and 5, and yet we just dipped and crossed below the 475 support. So therefore, we start moving sideways between 450 and 475 to the end of the year before that volatility diminishes?
That could be possible, that we are probably just fluctuating between those two. But also from the, like, you see this whole cash out index, that drop, that, a lot of cash has been going out, surprises me a lot. And I want to also tell you a little bit about this MJ, the existing ETF. There has been like a huge drop here. And this is the M-Flow, which is most technical traders use this. This is a money flow index. And you can see there is like a huge drop in the last short period of time. Last 2 weeks, there have been like a huge drop as well in the money outflow as well in this particular scenario. So I don't know, last week I read some news where Joe Biden was talking about not supporting marijuana legalization. I don't know if it's related to that or it's related to general end of year, but it might be political, it might be non-political, it might be just the funds, how they're managing. And I think it's very interesting. Holding is probably the best thing to do at this point, is just holding and waiting for stabilization before getting into any in this market is probably, I would suggest that.
Well, to counter the Joe Biden argument, there's a bill that's going into the Senate tomorrow. It's a landmark bill where they're going to vote on descheduling cannabis. So I think there's a 1% chance that it's going to be voted on. It's not going to go anywhere, but that counters the argument for Joe Biden. Oh, okay. I think that's baked in the cake, but I do wonder if it is asset reallocation, although I would have asked that in October and I would have asked that in September as you take a look at the dips in every single month. So maybe it's just volatility. We're just going to have to come back to the talking hedge and find out. Yeah. So with that, we're going to roll this one up. I'm Josh Kincaid. I want to thank Rohit Srivastava, Chief Investment Officer and Portfolio Manager with Saroj and Bhanu Fund. Thanks for being back on the podcast.
Thank you.
By the way, if you enjoy the content, please show your support with the cushy gesture of $4.20 a month on the Talking Hedges Patreon page. This will kind of help me spread the word. I've been asked to speak all over the world, from Toronto and Colombia, Spain, Miami, all over, Tokyo. But your support's important to me. I haven't monetized the podcast. I want to be as authentic and transparent as possible. I want to avoid conflicts of interest or even the perception of paid opinions. So don't forget to like, share, and subscribe, or pay me on the Talking Hedges Patreon page, or don't, and I'm out.